The Tampa Bay Lightning have signed defenseman Victor Hedman to a 4-year extension, an average annual value of $8 million. Hedman just finished his 15th season for Tampa Bay. He's won 2 cups. He's won a Conn Smythe. He's won a Norris Trophy. He's 33 years old. He's the franchise leader among defensemen in goals, assists, and points. And the contract he signed is the exact same deal former teammate Steven Stamkos signed with Nashville on Monday.
First and foremost, obviously, I want to circle back to, the events yesterday, and obviously losing, a guy that has been my best friend for the past 15 years. Seeing Stammer go was not something that anyone expected, and, the same goes for me. And, me and Stammer has had obviously a lot of conversations throughout the last few weeks, and I've kind of been, what's been said is obviously going to stay between us, but it's a sad day, not just for me, but for the the fans, the organization, the city of Tampa, for what he's done. And it's going to be hard to imagine going into our locker room and going into Amalie Arena and not seeing him on the ice.
Hi, Victor. Obviously, it's quite early, but if the opportunity arose, would you be receptive to the captaincy?
Yeah, you answer your own question with the first part of your question. So, yeah, that's way too soon. I think, for me, yeah, I mean, just I don't know what to say to that. I look at myself as a leader. And, I've been an alternate captain for many, many years, behind the best captain in the game. So, we'll see where it goes in the future. But, yeah, it's been close to 24 hours since, Stammer left. So I think it would be disrespectful to him and not fair to anyone to comment on that.
Oh boy, that was awkward. It's the second of 3 appearances by our friend Frankie Corrado. And Frankie, Victor Hedman does not seem happy about the fact that Steven Stamkos is no longer a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. You've been in NHL training camps. I'm curious, it's so raw right now. He said it, right? It's only been 24 hours. But by the time you get to training camp, is there a chance that by then everyone's sort of accepted the situation? Or do you think it's actually going to be an awkward transition for this team this fall?
It's going to be more awkward, Jay, once you get to training camp. Everyone knows what that locker room feels like with Steven Stamkos in it. You know what the presence is. You know the communication. Like, that's your captain. That's a big guy in the room. Now, you finish the season, he's on your team. You show up the next season and he's not there. That's when it's going to feel empty. That's the biggest way that I can describe it. It's an empty feeling knowing that someone who's been there that long and has had such a presence on and off the ice is no longer going to be on that team. So it's going to get more awkward as we get closer to training camp and as those guys, filter into town. And I played for Toronto when Dion Phaneuf got traded in the middle of the season. And, Dion's there one day, big personality, like leader of the room, center of attention. Next day, you're looking around for that. It's not there anymore. And that's going to be the feeling that they have come training camp when Steven Stamkos isn't there. But there's a few pretty telling remarks there by Victor Hedman when he says, best captain ever or something along those lines. And he says, I'm going to keep what we said between us. Basically, what I read into that is, yeah, I kind of agree that it's crazy that this guy's moving on and not exactly thrilled about it, but let's keep that between us. So it sounds like it could get a little awkward in Tampa Bay.
And yet, I think it's a lock that he will indeed be the captain. There we go. Broke eventually. It's interesting, Frankie, because that deal that Hedman just signed is the exact same deal that Stamkos signed in Nashville. So let's take emotion out of it. I know it's tough to do that, but let's just look on paper. 2 players, one's a defenseman, one's a forward, both Hall of Famers for sure. But at the end of the day, would you take that Hedman deal if you're running the Tampa Bay Lightning over the Stamkos deal?
I'll take that Hedman deal all day long, Jay, because he's probably, like, if Victor Hedman got $10 million a year, would anyone have batted an eye at that?
Totally.
Like, Drew Doughty was a great player in Los Angeles. He still is. Legacy guy, makes $11 million a year. So Victor Hedman makes 8 in Tampa Bay. Same kind of player, legacy guy, 1 Stanley Cup, still a very good player. He's making $8 million a year. That's a steal for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like, Victor Hedman in a different organization could have got a lot more money. Here's where I kind of have the issue with it, Jay. You know, Steven Stamkos gets $8 million from the Nashville Predators, and this would all be speculation, okay? But he took less money to stay in Tampa Bay the first time around. You know, he left some money on the table. He probably would have left some money on the table to stay in Tampa Bay this time around, but not as much as they were offering him. If it, you know, $3 million, like, that's such a massive discrepancy. If it was in the sixes, you know, if they could find a way to come up with $3 million more to pay Steven Stamkos, he might still be a Tampa Bay Lightning. Yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of where I have the issue with comparing these contracts apples to apples. They're not apples to apples. The Hedman contract, you know, in the grand scheme of things, is team friendly, and they couldn't find a way to get Stamkos on a team friendly deal in Tampa Bay either.
Yeah, it still is bewildering. We got to move on though, and talk about this Adam Henrique deal. It came together late Monday night. Jeff Jackson gets Henrique done, 2 years, $3 million a season. And Henrique talked about one of the big reasons that he decided to return to Edmonton.
Yeah, maybe you sacrifice a bit of ice time and that sort of thing, or even, I guess, money at the end of the day. But it's to have that opportunity to win and to play in Edmonton in front of those fans was special for me.
You know, he's a guy who was playing in Anaheim for quite a while, New Jersey for quite a while. Those are, all due respect to those fans, those are not lively buildings generally throughout the season. And then you go through that Oilers playoff run. Are you surprised, though, Frankie, that Jeff Jackson was not only willing and able to get the band back together, that playoff team essentially got everyone signed, but he also added a couple of forwards? Are you surprised that he was able to pull all that off?
No, Jay, I'm not surprised at all. Like, there's a few things at play here. One, you know, the opportunity to play with Connor McDavid and what that entails, I think that's hard for some players to pass up. Like, that's such a selling point as far as recruiting players. Listen, you're going to get to play with McDavid. Like, this guy at some point, Jay, you have to think is going to win a Stanley Cup, so you're going to be in that mix. And he has some familiarity with Edmonton, with the city, with the fans, with the team. So you kind of know what the vibe is like. You know the team is knocking on the door to winning a Stanley Cup. And if you think you're one win away, you bring back a lot of those guys. It feels like there's not a huge roster turnover there. They actually got a little bit better. You know, for someone like Adam Henrique, who's at that point in his career, put yourself in a position to win. And there's not a better position than the Edmonton Oilers as far as trying to win a Stanley Cup right now. Like, there's a lot of good players coming back. They've answered a lot of the questions and the doubts maybe that team has had over the years. Like, he's positioned himself really well, or as best as he can, to make another run for a Stanley Cup.
And finally, Juraj Slafkovsky also spoke on Tuesday after signing that 8-year contract extension with the Montreal Canadiens for just over $60 million. Here's what Juraj had to say.
Well, for me, it was the 8 years. I mean, if I wanted, I don't know, more money or something else, I could wait, or I could think about all these other things. But I feel like it's done now and it's out of the way, and I don't have to think about it. I can just focus on playing and focus on winning, and that's the most important thing to me. So, and I'm happy that I have a contract for another 9 years with Montreal, and I want to win, and I want to build something special with the other guys.
Yeah, I think he can buy a place in the plateau. Here we go, Chris. There it goes. Frankie, you said you liked the deal when you were on our show yesterday, and now you've got Slafkovsky, you got Nick Suzuki, you have Cole Caulfield all lucked up till at least 2030. But you call a lot of these games with Brian Mudryk, our buddy. How close do you think this team is to actually competing?
Competing for a playoff spot, Jay, pretty far away still, but that's okay. Like, they're kind of in this long game, the Montreal Canadiens, where they don't need to try and rush things or expedite things. It's a really smart fan base in Montreal. Like, they understand where the team is at, and they understand that, you know, there's still a few things that need to happen. There's some money that needs to come off the books. There's some younger players that still need to develop on the back end and up front. And once those things happen, then you're talking about a realistic opportunity, you know, to be competitive in the Atlantic Division, which is, you know, Florida, Tampa, Boston, Toronto, those teams aren't going anywhere. You know, Buffalo, Detroit, they're trying to take a step. Ottawa's trying to take a step. So, you know, it's a long way of saying that the Montreal Canadiens are right where they should be, and they shouldn't abandon their plan. Like, their plan has a long-term goal in mind, and just because they're maybe not competing for a playoff spot this year doesn't mean that there's no purpose in what they're doing. Like, they will still be competitive in games. Marty St. Louis, like, kind of demands that from his team, and they will have, you know, internal goals that they push for. Playing for a playoff spot will be talked about, but maybe not a realistic goal, but that's okay. They're right where they should be.